you've kind of seen AJ in different roles, and I would imagine you've worked with Impacts in slightly different relationships. Talk about what that relationship looks like.
Sheer Supply was one of our customers, and so we were doing a major overhaul.
What are the big differences in the new organization?
There's support both directions. So, they want to really help with the vision and, where we're going as well. And down even to the branch level.
Even when there's alignment or when there's not alignment, like how do you build that trust to be able to have that type of relationship?
I think a lot of it's transparency. They've kind of given me the keys now to run the digital transformation how I see fit.
And really what makes the difference in improving adoption or improving percentage of revenue?
You always want more. And I think sometimes you want more because you're comparing yourself to, B2C websites that have budgets and scales that are, way beyond what we're at in the B2B distribution space. So it's really trying to understand and target what's going to be the largest value to you and the most cost efficient within your own platform.
As we dug into it a little bit and we were talking about how they measure success and the metrics that they're using, and then they started sharing that each branch location has a metric for percent of sales online.
We have a small team, but I feel like the entire organization is all a part of the same digital push. We're all pushing towards that same goal. So it feels like my team size maybe is 5 or 10. So it's great having a whole organization in the same directions.
So today's episode's a little bit different. I get AJ Brenner from ARG, Bob Lewis from Impacts. We're in the room together. I just do so many of these virtual podcasts. So having you guys actually in the studio here in this amazing studio is pretty amazing. I appreciate you guys being here.
Yeah, it's fun. Our pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I like the format because I think we can cover some of the stuff that people really struggle to talk about. And having a partner and a customer in the same room, I'm interested to hear kind of your two sides of the story here.
Yeah, we'll either be wrestling or shaking each other's hands, right?
That's going to make a great podcast if you're wrestling. I'll put my money on AJ, but that's another story.
Oh, come on.
That's a good bet.
You guys have actually worked together across two different companies too, so I want to get into that as well. But let's take a minute, just say who you are, what company you work for, and kind of what your role is there as well.
ARG Brenner, so Director of eCommerce and Digital for ARG Industrial. We are a hose and fitting distributor based in the Pacific Northwest and Alaska.
But started in Alaska, right?
Yep, started in Alaska. We're basically the only distributor out there selling hose and fittings, so that is our main market.
I think it's funny how progressive of a company you are in e-commerce and started basically in Alaska. You just wouldn't expect it.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me 5 years ago I've been working for an Alaskan-based company, I would have probably laughed a little bit because I just wouldn't have expected it. But, great company, great people. It's all employee-owned as well. And, yeah, super happy.
When Mike Powers said he was going to work for ARG, I couldn't picture it. I couldn't figure out what it was until he explained it like that too. So it's pretty cool.
Albany, New York to Anchorage, Alaska. It's a pretty far distance for him for sure.
That's amazing. And Bob?
Yeah, so I'm Bob Lewis. I'm the founder of Impacts. We are a digital agency serving and sometimes driving digital in the wholesale distribution space.
So you guys have worked across two different companies together. Talk a little bit about those two companies. I know there's you've kind of seen AJ in different roles, and I would imagine you've worked with Impacts in slightly different relationships in the two. Talk about what that relationship looks like.
Sheer Supply was one of our customers, and so we were doing a major overhaul on their web presence. And, we've been working with one team, and then all of a sudden a new team came along. So this was AJ and actually his cousin Addison, who's the CIO there at Sheer Supply. So it was really, very exciting for us because it was, kind of a fresh team, young team, very focused on e-commerce, very focused on their customers, very focused on, how can we actually apply digital technology to make a difference in the business? And how can we go from our current single-digit adoption and sales online to, significant double digits online. So it was very refreshing for us. It was a great partnership.
And AJ, how did you, like, what's been kind of the change in your relationship, one company to another?
That's actually the funny part is there really wasn't much change for me because it was actually the exact same project manager. So when I left
you did?
The following week, I was like, well, I guess I'll see you next week as well. So
that's
we
funny.
even kept our same scheduled time slot for our
Did you
calls.
really?
So no, it was actually a very easy transition.
Oh,
And
that's
it's funny
amazing.
because it's the same e-commerce platform, the same ERP, same consultant, same project manager. So it was probably one of the easiest transitions. So it really worked with Impacts in kind of a very similar capacity when it comes to really driving the digital transformation.
Bob, what is the executive alignment look like for ARG today? I know that's such a big thing there. Like, from your perspective, what does that look like, and how does it affect how you guys work together?
Yeah, it's the best. I mean, when you just kind of we talked about it before, the importance of executive support and kind of top down direction on the value of digital in a given organization. And with Mike, I see Mike as a CEO who is essentially saying, digital might not be there in my industry just yet. It's not taken off as quickly as it has in some other industries, but it will. It's a natural evolution. And when it does, and when my competitors realize it's important, I want to be the leader. And so he's positioning and running the company and running the program that way.
Hey Jay, what's it like? I mean, you were part of a family-owned business before, and now moving to this. What are the big differences in the new organization?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like what Bob said. I mean, Mike Mortensen, a great leader, and he's really, far ahead of the curve when it comes to our industry. He's the one who's kind of standing out and speaking in front of the entire industry, saying, this is where we need to go in the next few years, and we're already behind the curve, and so we have a lot of catch up to play. So, I mean, it's great because any type of initiative, comes from Mike Mortensen or Mike Powers. Their support both directions. So they want to really help with a vision and where we're going as well, and down even to the branch level. We have people that have gotten very involved as well, giving ideas up too, because they see that from the top level that they're talking about it and they're bringing excitement to what we're doing on the digital side. So it's really refreshing because at the conference we were at, I mean, I feel like everyone I talked to had the complete opposite problem. And I didn't want to bring up my side because I was like, well, I don't have those issues at all. I mean, I probably have the opposite where I have so many ideas coming down. I have to filter through, what's going to be the most important for our customers and what's going to bring the most value at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would agree. In of the 60 plus, distributors that we've worked with over time, it's really been a small handful, 5 maybe, where you've seen that kind of level of executive support for the digital program. And without fail, those all became some of the most successful outcomes we saw.
From your perspective, AJ, how is that trust built between the executive and digital team, even when there's alignment or when there's not alignment? How do you build that trust to be able to have that type of relationship?
I think a lot of it's transparency. They've kind of given me the keys now to run the digital transformation how I see fit, and so it's executing on that, but also sharing the important wins. So bringing up in our executive meetings, saying, hey, this is what the initiative that we're working on. Here's the outcome, and then whenever it's finished, following up on that, saying, hey, this initiative is finished now. Here's the impact it's had on our business. Here is the impact it's had on our customers, and what value we've received from that. Because I think a lot of times, we might make investments in the digital platform, but the ROI is not really seen from the executive level. And so really emphasizing where that value is coming from, because for us, we're not in a high adoption industry. So it's not going to be, directly attributed to the cart alone. It's, trying to show value through analytics that our customers are interacting with it. They're using it to start their journey. And right now they might be finishing their journey at a, in-person brick and mortar store, but, eventually that trend's going to slowly shift over time to where they interact more with the website and they take it to the next step and then eventually to the checkout process.
Let's call out some people. Who's the project manager that you worked with at both companies?
Jacob Cabrera.
Jacob
A
Cabrera.
great guy. He's really helps us kind of take my visions or my napkin ideas and execute on them, organize them, and keep a accurate timeline so that we can give those expectations to executives and then come back and say, hey, we hit our timeline. The sprint's finished, and now here's the end product.
Do you guys meet? Is it a weekly meeting that you guys have together, or more than?
So we have a formal weekly meeting, but frankly, I think Jacob knows at this point. I just call him all the time, and we have a direct Teams chat as well. So it's kind of a constant communication, because I mean that's what you need in a partner. Is if it's just that weekly call and I have to wait every week to have any type of touch point, then it's going to be too slow and we're not going to have as much progress. But whenever I can reach out, no matter what time it is, and know he's going to get support done, and then the team is going to execute that on the back end. I mean, it gives you confidence as well. So that if something happens, I know there's another team that's backing us up to make sure that we're not dropping the ball for our customers.
Bob, with those people, how do you think about hiring? Because you have e-commerce, knowledge of distribution, the hard combination to get, unless you're literally stealing every VP of e-com from all the distributors, which I know you're not.
Right.
Like what's your mentality around being able to hire great people?
Yeah. So what we look for is one of the two. It's rare that we're going to find somebody, who comes out of distribution with a strong e-commerce background. So we tend to find either people who have really strong e-commerce backgrounds, and then we spend time helping them understand what our market is and what wholesale distribution means. Or we've got several people on our team that were in the wholesale distribution side of the business. So they were sitting on AJ's side of the table, and we're really focused on educating them on the e-commerce side of things. So it's rare that we can find both, but we definitely look for one or the other and then cross-train.
You have a kind of a mixed team, onshore, offshore.
Yeah.
How do you balance, like, how does the interaction with customers work onshore, offshore?
Yep. So we really try to put the onshore team as the tip of the spear with the customers. So the project managers, the user experience design, if we're doing strategy work, all that is done by professionals here in the States and directly with the customer. We also know that in our market, our customers are very cost conscious. They don't have the Accenture type money to throw around on consulting, so that we know that we need to be competitive from a cost perspective. So we've got a 60-person organization in India that's a wholly owned subsidiary of Impacts, and that's where we do all the development. And we take special care to really promote within that organization that they are part of Impacts, that it is a united team here between the guys that are here in the States and the guys that are there in India.
How important is the people side of this relationship that you have here?
I mean, it's super important because, it's like I said, it's a two-way street. You need to have trust between each other, and there's got to be execution from both ends. It's not just asks from, to the impact side. It's also asked, from their side to us as well. So it's a two-way street and a partnership. And that's why, for us, we think of them as an extension of our team. They are, a member of ARG in some capacity. And that's important because, the relationships we build is why we have such a large push on digital, because it's just something that's really changing in our industry very slowly, but it's something that it's coming fast. And, if we're not prepared and ahead of the curve, then, I'll have to send about 100 projects to Bob, which I don't think you'll mind that too much, but, trying to stay ahead of that curve, bring that value. And it's really all based upon, the people you work with, the project managers, and even the overseas teams that we interact with quite often too. It's having that close relationship with them, knowing that, hey, we might be on a tight deadline and it's not ideal asking you to get something turned around by Monday, but, more often than not, they execute on that, and we can rely on them for it.
Mhm.
In both your situations, AJ, you've kind of come into a situation where it needed to be improved, right? Um, and and you chose not to kind of do a rip and replace of platforms versus actually working within the platforms you chose. Can you talk about kind of that decision process and really what makes the difference in improving adoption or improving percentage of revenue?
Yeah, I think the gut instinct is always just to, rip and replace a platform altogether. And, to be candid, I probably had that conversation with Bob a few times, over the past few years. And, he's talked me off the ledge because sometimes it's frustrating when a feature isn't, built inherently into a platform and you always want more. And I think sometimes you want more because you're comparing yourself to, B2C websites that have budgets and scales that are, way beyond what we're at in the B2B distribution space. And so it's really trying to understand and target what's going to be the largest value to you and the most cost efficient within your own platform. Because in the end, most of the platforms have very similar feature sets. And the big key, how we've kind of differentiate ourselves, using Impacts is custom building tools that have value to our specific customer base and to different segments within our customer base. Because for us, we have maybe 15, 20 industries we sell to. And so there's a lot of different tools that we could build, but we really have to cater to, those three core audiences and what's going to have the most ROI.
Bob, what's your perspective on? I know you walk into a lot of customers and they're talking about maybe their platform or the process that's broke. How do you address that?
Yeah, it's I first kind of start with trying to understand why they think that. I feel like that's an easy target, is to say this is a software problem. Let me just deinstall this one and install another one, and everything will work great at that point. And then I started asking them about, the digital transformation within their organization and what have they done to gain, buy-in from the sales organization, and what have they done to sort of promote the site as a value-added service internally in terms of what they're delivering to their customers. And, invariably it's very little. And my honest conclusion to them at that point is changing the platform and doing the same thing you're doing right now isn't going to get you the result that you're looking for. This is really about the digital transformation and then evaluating, will the platform support where we're going from a digital transformation perspective?
I envy this relationship between the two of you guys. And so I'm curious from your two sides now with what you've learned in this relationship. And I know it's not perfect, right? We're not trying to paint it as perfect. But I envy how strategically aligned you are and how people aligned you are, and I've heard that consistently from all your people on both sides. So I know it's not just one or the other. I'm curious from what you've learned in this relationship, that how do you select partners moving forward? Like, what are the kind of the top things that you're looking for? And then Bob, I'm curious from your perspective, your relationship with your customers is important too. It's not just money and transactions. Like these are the things that are most profitable for both. How do you evaluate the customers that you're trying to choose moving forward?
Yep.
Yeah, I think the big thing is, having a partner that's very forward looking. We're very busy day to day, in the weeds, working with, our branch teams for that internal adoption. And, I really rely on Impacts and, even looking at other vendors to be very forward looking in what's coming in the market, what features, what changes, what shifts are happening, and where can we take advantage of those in our business. And that's something that, on my side, I try to, read and look into and, understand what's happening in the industry. But, Bob is, a practitioner that's talking with, hundreds of distributors and prospects, and here's plenty of, pain points and, features and enhancements that they're doing. So, it's something that's very helpful to us, having someone that's well connected and not an agency that's so small that they're very, narrowed in on one segment. So they're in so many different industries that they have a very broad perspective on enhancements on where we sit as a platform and kind of the direction we should go in. So, I think that's a very big key in, selecting the right vendor. And in the end, having someone that is, really is easy to talk to, someone that you can just call up and have a conversation, talk through maybe some pain points, issues, or ideas for the future, and just kind of being able to brainstorm back and forth. Like, I think here in the next month or two, Bob, myself, and our CTO and CEO are going to meet here in Dallas and, just kind of brainstorm for a whole day and just talk through, what do we need to be thinking about for the next 3 years for our website, and what, are the next key steps for us. So I think both of those are just really key aspects in choosing a partner.
That was my next question: is how do you guys actually approach bringing ideas to each other? So you guys are meeting together for a day in Dallas all together. Who's all coming out?
Mike Mortensen and Mike Powers.
Okay, and Mike Powers. Wow, and
me.
And you.
Yep.
Just Bob's big brain.
That's right.
And ideas.
That's all we need.
Yeah.
That's all you need. Oh, that's amazing. And what does that look like? How do you guys kind of present to each other things? Are you doing it kind of facilitated? Like, what does that look like? Because that's a cool executive.
Yeah, we've already
top-down.
started bouncing some ideas back and forth about things that we'd like to talk about, things that we'd like to investigate, and so that we can kind of really come to the session with some good ideas around approaches to some of these things. And I think just kind of building upon what AJ was saying, I think probably what makes a good partner for us, in this mix, is I would say it's mutual respect. It's we're a business trying to make a living, they're a business trying to make a living, and the approach of putting our collective minds and our collective skills together so that both people wind up succeeding. If you kind of go into it from that perspective, the relationship just works. If it's you asked what's not a good customer for us. If it is, and I hesitate to say this because I'm sure it'll be public, but if it is that project that's in the IT organization and it's just we want you to build a site and be gone, I'm like, I can't help you be successful. And that's meaningful to us. It's not just the job. What sort of kind of gets us going each day and kind of keeps us motivated is our customer success. So if we feel like we're in a situation where we're just not going to be able to help this person be successful, it's probably not going to be a good mix for us.
Well, I think that's been like when you talk to your customers, that's kind of the constant feedback you get is they're like that you're a strategic partner, that you're thinking about them a lot, not just building what they tell you to build. And I think that's pretty special. AJ, what does your actual team look like with you and Mike?
So it's just Mike,
and
myself, yeah, basically, and then we have one data enrichment specialist. So we keep our team really thin, and it's worked well. We've utilized great partners and impacts. We've also had a Unilog data enrichment team that helps us with the data enrichment side. So I tend to try to keep a lean team in general. I think now with the whole AI push, there's not as much need to add additional headcount. And I think that's also, there's a tendency to try to add to the team too quickly when it comes to an e-com department. And you almost put more pressure on yourself. And with the companies that have, that executive pressure to, see an ROI on the, large investments into digital, and they're looking at the headcount and they're wondering, why do we have so many people? And that's why we keep it so lean, because we don't need to hire when we have a team in impacts that has, the development team that has, help in the analytics on ads, whatever we need help with, so we don't have to continue to add to that number in the end. Yeah. And that's helped us a ton.
Yeah. But what I think I was talking with a distributor who has been having some, pretty significant success. And we were talking about the size of their team. And, it's a good sized team compared to distributors. It's 5 or 6 people, which, normally, the regional distributors got 1 or 2 in their organization. But as we dug into it a little bit and we were talking about how they measure success and the metrics that they're using, and then they started sharing that each branch location has a metric for % of sales online. and the merchandising product management teams have metrics for sales online for their different brands. And pricing has a metric. I started to realize you don't have a team of 5, you have a team of 50
Right.
in this organization who is really pulling this forward. And I think that really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think I feel the same way as well because, we have a small team, but I feel like the entire organization is all a part of the same digital
Yeah.
push. So, I have a great director of marketing and Kim Hunley, and, me and her work, multiple times a week on projects. So they're not necessarily on the e-com team directly, but we're all pushing towards that same goal. So it feels like my team size maybe is 5 or 10. So it's great having a whole organization in the same direction. So you don't need to add more headcount because you already had the individuals that just need to help push it from their own position.
A takeaway from that feels like it's better when the digital team blends into the rest of the company because the rest of the company has incorporated digital. I mean, like measuring, Bob, those, having everyone in the company have a metric for e-commerce,
Yeah.
Is critical. Bob, you and I, we used to joke about this, that, the fastest way to get adoption is to pay your salespeople 40% on offline and then 125% on online sales, and you'll get 30-day adoption across sales. But the other part of that was for all compensation inside the company to be measured, have an e-commerce measurement inside of it, from the CEO down to shipping, everyone being aligned to those goals. And I think that was a great example.
Yeah,
I wanted to share
absolutely.
that.
And then that's something we've actually implemented at ARG as well. So now our outside salesmen have a significant multiplier on digital sales. Our branch level has metrics directly tied to e-com revenue. So now the entire business is kind of rallying behind the same metrics, which is why it really simplifies our dashboards for our metrics, because we didn't need 30 things. We needed the 4 or 5 core parts of our business when it comes to digital transformation that are going to matter to someone at the branch level, at the executive level, and all in between.
Well, it sounds like too, you've made a decision to not build these things internally. You've outsourced you've extended your team with impacts instead of bringing that team locally because you found value there as well. Hey, Jim, I'm curious, when you think about your career, like what advice, the people that are listening, most of them are senior leaders, senior digital leaders that are kind of struggling through this whole process, or they just took a job and they're trying to figure out, like, what do we do? A lot of them came from the business side and they're looking at digital now as a career or a potential career. What's some of your advice to help those people out in their transition that wants to make this a career for their future?
I think a big piece of advice is not thinking it as 2 separate parts of the business itself. I mean, I went from the operations side into the digital side, and I think I was more prepared than anyone else because I was able to see what you got to deal with at an operational level. And I think for the ones that are maybe just starting in a digital position or maybe have been established for a while, I think going back and even doing a week or 2 working at the operational level and understanding the day-to-day there is a huge benefit, because you might be able to hear from a branch manager or an outside salesman of what's happening, but until you see the day-to-day, you don't really understand the needs or the asks of what you're pushing towards them when you're trying to have that digital transformation. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice, is just really get ingrained with your operational staff, because then they're the ones that have to deliver the service in the end in the distribution model. They're the most important key of it. If they're not there every day, then the business itself won't run.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that one. I feel like the people that we've seen be most successful in that role came from the operational side of the business, because it's a different animal. I can't tell you how many e-com managers who were new to distribution and trying to build a site, and they were like, I got this branch bought in, but this one is saying no, and I'm like, yeah, you don't understand. in wholesale distribution, each branch is its own business. So what you're dealing with are like 19 different businesses. So you need to, sort of think about it that way and approach it that way. But if you haven't been through it, you don't understand that. And those learnings take time.
Yeah, I mean, salesmen sell, the vision of what the operation teams deliver on.
Yeah. That's amazing. I think last question, Bob, is I feel like B2B e-commerce is cool, maybe for the first time in my 20 years. I mean, not like cool, but like everybody's now putting B2B e-commerce on their websites, right?
Yep.
If you're an agency at all, if you're a platform at all, you're putting B2B, you're adding B2B, or at least creating one page
right.
for your site. So from your perspective, like, you guys are a B2B e-commerce agency. In fact, you probably don't even do any retail.
Right.
Like, why is that? Why is that a big deal? Why is that a differentiator, in your opinion?
Yeah, and it almost goes to what I was just saying earlier. It's one thing, and I have definitely seen people say, I'm a manufacturer who sells my product to another business. Therefore, that's B2B e-commerce. And I'm like, kind of technically, but it's not. It's not. You're not dealing with the complexity, particularly the complexity that lives in wholesale distribution, where each branch is its own business. There are 19 different businesses that you're trying to work with. Each customer has their own unique pricing on every single item. And so really for us, understanding that complexity, it's almost like we came through the operational side of the business. So understanding that is really sort of key to figuring out how can we apply digital in the best way to make a difference in that kind of scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. We do very, very little on the B2C side. But on this aspect of things, we know this business.
We've separated in our content. We're creating a number of guides right now. One of the guides is a B2B e-commerce platform guide that helps companies we're not suggesting which platform to choose. We're walking them through a mindset, a framework of how to think through selecting a new one when you're at that decision point. But we've separated that very, very intentionally from the agency partners that you have. Because choosing that agency partner, in our mind, choosing that agency partner is at least equally as important, arguably more or less depending on who you are, but at least equally important of a decision throughout that process. And I think this, like what you guys have talked about today, really kind of echoes the reasons for that.
Mm-hmm.
So really, really appreciate you guys.
In fact,
go ahead.
I'll share a story
Please.
with you because this was, something that happened a couple months ago. And 2 years ago, I would have never seen this, but this goes to exactly the point that you were just making. We were engaged by an industrial distributor to do a digital strategy review. And so we did the strategy, and there were some clear things that jumped out that said, okay, here's what's not working for you, and here's why it's not working for you. And, this is a roadmap that we've built for you that we think would help you, sort of get there. And they were so happy with it that they said, can you guys implement this for us? And we said, that we're not necessarily familiar with the platform that you use.
Mm-hmm.
We would be happy to act as a sounding board or a coach or whatever, but we can't really, we can't deliver, we can't build that. And they said, what platform do you guys work with? And we told them what platforms we support, and they said, we'll take one. Switch platforms purely on the desire to work with a particular partner. Now, it happened to be us, but it was the emphasis on the partner and the knowledge of the partner that really sort of drove them down a path. And you wouldn't have seen that 2 years ago.
I mean, it's the big thing that we think at the association, which is the knowledge and information you have about this industry is the most important thing. You know, the ability to speak to a distributor in their words, the ability to understand what branches and all the words you guys have said today, branches and distribution centers are foreign to so many people, and being able to understand that and have that knowledge is so important. Along with we talked about having great people and great relationships. That's important, but I think that knowledge is just absolutely critical. That's amazing. Guys, I appreciate your time. I appreciate having you live in the Greenville studios. It's pretty amazing. We're going to have an amazing night. We're doing drinks and taking you on the tour of Greenville and,
Awesome.
and an amazing dinner.
Excited
It's
for
going to
it.
be great.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Manufacturers, distributors, leaders in the zone. If you're building B2B, this the podcast throne. The industry's heartbeat, we're setting the tone. Turn insights to actions, it's how empires are grown. We're